buyers don't need sellers for information. They don't need us for information. We have to figure out a way to position ourselves so they want us for information. And that's the process of what do we do to be more interesting by being interested. And that we use the term, how do we create value?
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients, so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Making Sales Social. Today, I am so excited to have Brandon Lee as my guest. Brandon is an accomplished entrepreneur and founder of Fistbump, a modern revenue creation consulting firm that helps businesses tackle the evolving landscape of sales and marketing. With extensive experience launching and scaling companies, 7 to date, with 3 successful exits, he's developed a keen understanding of how to navigate today's challenging sales environment. He's also the host of the highly ranked Mastering Modern Selling podcast, where he shares invaluable insights into social selling, one of my favorites, personal branding, and leveraging digital platforms for revenue generation. Brandon's passion for helping others transform their sales strategies has made him a sought-after consultant, trainer, and speaker. Join me as I dive into his experiences, insights, and actionable advice on mastering social selling and building a thriving sales pipeline. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Ren, wow, that was a lot. Thank you for that. And I'm excited. I get to be on your show. You've been on my show a couple times. This is fun.
I'm really excited, and the insights that you bring are always brilliant. But before we dive into your genius, we ask all of our guests one question, which is, what does making sales social mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, that is such a great and big question. I think so. My journey in this marketing and outreach world started in the 90s, before we had LinkedIn, before we had these digital tools. But I think going all the way back then is totally relevant now. As I like to say, nothing has changed. We just do it differently. And making sales social is that combination of, I believe, the know, like, and trust is never going away. Buyers still want to buy from people who they know, they like, they trust, and we have to bring our expertise to it. So making it social, I believe, is, if we're talking about LinkedIn and social media, we have to show up with both our business acumen and a bit of our humanity so that they can get to know us, not just know what we know, but to get to know us as a human. And when those two come together well, there's an acceleration of conversations and sales opportunities that take place.
Oh, I love that answer. I mean, I knew I'd love your answer, but I love that answer. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I really am primarily or most initially intrigued by the fact that you've launched several companies and experienced both successes and challenges that you're very open to talking about. So what are some of the key lessons you learned about building your successful go-to-market strategy? And talk a little bit about like your exit strategies and, whatever you want to share around that amazing topic.
Yeah, I think, thanks for that, Brent. I think, look, we live in this big entrepreneur environment now. And I think when I started my first company in 98, I was 28 years old. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had this vision. And in some ways, it was a lot easier because there wasn't all this entrepreneur competition. Now we live in this ecosystem where in the 90s, I told people I was starting a company and they'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Tell me about it. Like, people wanted to meet with me and learn and support and be a part of it. And it was an innovative thing. It was new. And I think now there's so many, it's like now you tell somebody you have a startup and they're like, oh, who doesn't have who doesn't have a startup? So I think it's, what I've learned is listening to our market is more important now than ever. Listening to what they want, what they don't want, what they need, how they speak. As an example, one of the evolutions that we've talked about, because I live in a weird world. I work with companies who tend to not have a CMO. I overlap with, I say I have one foot in sales and one foot in marketing. We do a lot of content creation, but for the purpose of very structured outreach to create conversations with clients. And as an example, we've talked about as a team, I believe a lot of what we do is demand creation. But we've also discovered a lot of our clients, if I say the term demand creation, they go, what? And so listening to them, and they like the term lead generation. And so we've shifted and we go ahead and use the term lead generation, even though technically I think what we do is more the demand creation side, but that's splitting hairs. So I think the advice I have is listening and being aware of the changes and the trends, especially around buyers. We've got a lot around buyer behavior. One of the mistakes that I've made in life where I learned a lot, my first company had a call center. A couple years later, somebody wanted to buy it. We sold it. Second company, big call center. We went from 0 to 18 million in revenue in 5 years. Private equity came along, wanted to buy it. We sold it. Great. Company later on, playbook. I've done this before. This works. Built it. Call center, failed. What happened? The buyer's behavior started to change. And I wasn't thinking, how were they different? I just came in with, here's my playbook. Here's what I've done. It worked before. But we live in an era where things are changing so quickly that we have to slow down and say, are the premises, the thesis, the beliefs that I have that worked before, are they still relevant today? Are they relevant with our buyers? Are they relevant with our industry? Are they still going to work? Because things are changing so quickly. There's no guarantee that what you did before is going to work today.
Yeah, so I love that. What pivot did you make of moving forward? I'm curious.
Well, that was the pivot when I started looking at LinkedIn differently. So this is about 2019. Call center didn't have the traction that it did before. We weren't getting the return calls. Emails weren't getting as returned. And I was looking at LinkedIn more, unfortunately, like a lot of people, it was like a substitute for the phone or a substitute for email. We were pushing out, we were spamming, we were pitch slapping, we were doing, and it just wasn't getting anywhere. And I'm like, what happened? For us, we're like, oh, we got this great offering. Of course, people are going to be interested. No. Going back to, my favorite book is still How to Win Friends and Influence People. And
that's the ultimate classic.
It's the ultimate book, right? And it's, the basic is to create interest, you have to give interest, right? And the best way to be interesting is to be interested. And so often our outreach messages aren't interesting. They're self-centered. They're about us. They're, when your outreach only has, can I get your time to sell you something? Now, we say it differently, but that's the base of what we say, right? Can I get your most important, your most important asset you have, time, and spend it on me because I think I have something important to share to you? Like, come on, we got to do better. And so I think when I saw all that, when I was doing all that, what I say now is wrong, and realized that when I showed up in a room for like a networking event, I learned and knew, go be interested in order to be interesting. I didn't apply it in our outreach. And I believe that's the big evolution with outreach, with digital, with social, is buyers don't need sellers for information. They don't need us for information. We have to figure out a way to position ourselves so they want us for information. And that's the process of what do we do to be more interesting by being interested. And that we use the term, how do we create value? I love the challenge of if we want to be seen as a trusted advisor, then we have to ask ourselves, what's the trusted advice that we're giving? Because 99 times out of 100, if you talk to a sales team about what trusted advice they're giving, it's always after they got the first call. Oh, well, when we're talking to them, no. It's got to be before the first call, because you have to be perceived as that trusted advisor before you get the first call in order to give trusted advice. So I think that's the big aha. And what I learned is that I took my existing go-to-market playbook, plopped it in on a new company, and it didn't work. And through the pain of failure is where I finally got what is going on here? And that's when I started asking the right questions and had the aha moment of going, the buyers changed a bit. The core buyers are all the same, but the way that they behave has changed, and we have to adjust accordingly.
I love that. Yeah, we always say earn the right to get the conversation. And so I love the idea of, in order to be a trusted advisor, you have to show up as a trusted advisor to earn the right to be their trusted advisor. So I think that's awesome. We had a conversation today. We have an email going out where we're inviting people to an event, and I kept reading it. I'm like, we've got to make a change, because it starts with, I'm excited, or we're excited to invite you. And I'm like, why do they care if I'm excited? I want them to be excited. And so it's interesting, because that's kind of that world where you work, right? How do you reframe some of that messaging so it isn't about me and that I'm excited to invite you, or we're excited about our new launch, or we're right. And so
no one cares.
So I'm going to ask, this is not meant to be free advice, but it is asking for free advice, but hopefully it will help others listening. How would you reframe something like that so they can experience what that looks like working with you, moving from I'm excited to invite you to?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of different ways to do it, but I think the foundation of it is, and it's simple and very difficult at the same time. We have to get ourselves in understanding our ideal customer. Very, very detailed, right? What is it that they need, they want, they're struggling with it? And then how do we present things to them that speaks to that core? What is it? So as an example, instead of I do a webinar on, and we have a framework for how to use a LinkedIn live show and podcast for sales outreach. Most often when we think of a live show or podcast, we think marketing. And our framework says we go beyond marketing and we go into outreach. How do you do it? So I could say, Brent, I am so excited to share with you my new webinar, in which case you probably don't care how excited I am or how much I love it or anything like that. But the question is always, what is our ideal customer? What do they need to hear? And so that's where we get into those trigger points or what those stresses or those challenges are. So in that case, it might be, are you struggling with creating first conversations with clients? Do you get, do your cold emails get a really low response rate? Are you creating enough conversations? Is your pipeline empty? Any of those things that pertain to them, or the right language of it is your pipeline empty? We have this framework and then talk about your social proof. We have a customer that had a 400% increase in their pipeline and 120% of their revenue in 6 months implementing this framework. We just have to speak in a way that makes them go, I need that, instead of them looking at it going, do I really want to take my time to pay attention to this?
Very interesting. So my curiosity in there is that still pitching too soon? I'm curious. This is not, it's, so could we, like my reaction would be, is your pipeline drying up? Here are 3 insights. If you'd like to learn more,
Right.
then.
Yeah,
So-
I agree with you. I think I tried to say it real quick. I think there's layers of other information or resources that are going out over time before you get to that pitch. So, like as an example, we use our LinkedIn Live show and our podcast with lots of information. We have experts like you that come on, and then we leverage that. We share a lot of that with our audience of just straight like, we're sharing this episode with you because if you're struggling with these 3 things, here's A, B, and C points that were made. And of course, we leverage other people's credibility, like you as our guest. But a lot of most of the messages that we send out are laying that foundation of giving that value. Why could this serve you? How we think of it as bank deposits versus bank withdrawals.
I love that.
Right. So it's how do we give before we go and ask for any sort of withdrawal. But that withdrawal still has to be about them, not about how much we love our webinar. We're so excited to do this one. I don't care how excited you are. Why should I take my time to pay attention to this? That's where the messaging is so important. But I think we could establish that credibility over time by what we give, and what we give. And then when we have that more direct, hey, we want to move you into something, we can be more direct, but it's got to be other oriented.
Yeah, I love that. That kind of moves me into an area that you talk a lot about, which is buyer experience. So how is the expectation of you, we've already kind of touched on this a little bit of buyers though, how has that evolved over the years, and what strategies can teams implement to make sure that they are meeting the new buyer expectation?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a really complicated topic to take on. I do think, and because I do constantly go back to How to Win Friends and Influence People, once I read that, it's like changed everything that I did. And I know there's the layers of complexity of personalities and different, like sometimes you get on a Zoom or a Teams call with somebody and they just want the facts. They want to be very focused on what are you offering? Why should I care about it? And then get off the phone. And other people want to be more relational. They want to know who they're talking to. I think the key there for everybody in sales right now is you got to first know yourself to lead yourself. You have to, we can't be the best salesperson to every person we try to talk to. You've got all these layers of variables that are there as well. One of the best things that we can do, I believe, is knowing ourselves in order to lead ourselves. And then it also helps find the buyers that are best for us. What I mean by that is that, especially in a social world, and I like this, how do we marry our business acumen with our humanity? And I want everyone to hear, I didn't say personal. It's your humanity. Think about if you're at a live networking event, not every conversation we have there is business. In fact, 80 to 90% of them are not business at all. What are we doing? We're starting to lay that foundation to see, who do we like? Who do we trust? Who do we want to get to know? Who would we be interested in going to a deeper level with? That's what networking events do. And then we got this LinkedIn tool that's called social networking platform, not social selling platform. I think the first motion is about the same as that networking side. We got to let people get to know us. We've got to get to know them. And that's where we're bringing our business acumen and we're bringing a bit of our humanity. One of the things that I love, and this is my style, and it works well for me, and I know it doesn't work well for everybody, but I know that I like to use my LinkedIn Live show, my podcast, the content I create to start to create my reputation. That reputation, we know our reputation goes before us. The question is, are we strategic about it? Are we influencing it, or is it haphazard? But when that reputation goes before us because of all the content we share, the way that we talk, I want to work on having my industry, the people, my buyers say things like, I see you everywhere, and I feel like I already know you. Because I know if I do that with my social activity, when our outreach activity is asking them to come to a webinar or respond to my voicemail or respond to an email or come by our booth or anything like that, they're much, much more likely to do that because, oh my gosh, I see you everywhere and I feel like I know you. And I'll give you this quick example and then I'll be quiet.
I love this. You're here to talk, so please.
Yeah, I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn, connection request. He was an owner of a tech company, a Microsoft partner, and we happen to serve a lot of Microsoft partners. And he happened to be in the Atlanta area where I am. He sent me the connection request. I accepted. He sent me back. He said, hey, we're both owners of companies in the Atlanta market. Would you like to get together for coffee? I said, sure, absolutely. We get together for coffee. And the first question I asked him is, I said, so why did you want to meet with me? And he said, well, I bought this company about 6 months ago, and I been on LinkedIn, and I'm looking around the Microsoft ecosystem, and I look at somebody's post, and I'm like, oh, this Brandon Lee guy commented. And then I look at another post from someone else, and this Brandon Lee commented. And he's like, and then I started looking at your content, and he goes, you just look like you were really highly involved in the Microsoft ecosystem.
I love it.
That reputation, basically, I see you everywhere. I feel like I already know you. And so he reached out to me to meet, have coffee, and now starting down the conversation of serving him in his company. So I think that that's the social part of sales, because all things being equal, most buyers want to do business with people who they like to spend time with. Like we got to work, we got to do this thing. I might as well do it with somebody I enjoy more. And again, it's all things being equal. Somebody else has a product that blows yours out of the water. They may go with someone else, even if they don't care for them as much. But I think all things being equal, that is a huge advantage. And it's also the way I prefer to run my companies and do my sales and lead my life, because I have more fun doing it that way. Oh
my gosh, I love that so much. That kind of leads us a little bit into your framework. Part of your reputation is the Social Selling 2.0 blueprint. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our framework is actually around, and as it's evolved, especially over the last probably 18 months, if our reputation precedes us and our reputation helps open doors or keeps doors closed, we need to be strategic about it. And where we found is that LinkedIn Live show and the podcast is the foundation of building our reputation, because we have a episode strategy, we have a pre-episode communication strategy, and we have a post-episode communication strategy. So that's really the framework that we have, these three legs of a stool. Episode strategy. Who are your guests? You can be a prospect. Great way to meet prospects. And here's your difference. Call, ring, ring. Hey, do you have time for me to sell you something? Or ring, ring. Hey, I would love for you to be a guest on our show. Would you be interested? Just from that initial relationship building. But you can design your show and your episodes around bringing prospects to be a guest and share what they're, because we love to talk about ourselves, right? That's one thing about humans. We love to talk about ourselves. Another option is bring your customers as guests. Let them tell your stories and their successes. And then the one like I did with you was, we call it our big dog strategy. Bring the big dogs in the industry on as guests and leverage their credibility, learn from them, bring their expertise to your audience, and use that when you promote your show and tag them, and it helps extend your network. And again, if the goal is I see you everywhere and I feel like I know you, we want to get that additional exposure. Then the second step is the pre-episode strategy. How do we use that episode We can send emails to our customers in advance and say, hey, I'm going to have Bren Tillman on our show next week, and we're going to talk about these things. This is how awesome Bren is. You should come. We're adding value. We're being trusted advisors, but we're not selling. We're just inviting them. And that's kind of the pre-show or pre-episode strategy. We invite, we do all that. The post-episode strategy is a ton. Like, there's a lot to do there. We take a 45-minute LinkedIn live show and podcast, and we create over 28 pieces of content. And we use it in different ways. So here's one example for that. This one is like the easiest and the coolest. You do your LinkedIn live show, and people register for it. And we know not everybody comes, but those that register, afterwards, I go to the event, I click and see everyone that registered, and I go down the list. And if they're second or third connections, I'm not connected to them. Oh my gosh, I'm sending them a connection request, and I have something already to talk to them about. Hey, you registered for my show. Thank you so much. I noticed we're not connected. Let's connect. What did you think of the show? What are future topics you'd want to see? If somebody registered, they're a first connection and they're a good prospective client, send them a message. Thanks for registering for the show. What did you think? Is there something like, it's just a great way to create ongoing conversation and stay top of mind with people. And really all we're doing is adding value with the show. So that framework is, there's a episode strategy, who you bring on as guests, what you talk about, maybe the structure of it. Is it conversational? Is it interview style? Is it curated content style? Pre-episodes and post-episode. How are we using that entire ecosystem around your show very strategically to meet more of your prospects, build your reputation, and create those conversations?
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, oh gosh, time went really, really fast. So I guess it's my second to last question is, what question did I not ask you that I should have?
Yeah, I kind of jumped in on the LinkedIn live show. I think the question would be, as I shared that example about me commenting on other people's posts and that gentleman going, you just seem very well connected in the ecosystem. So the question would be, what do I think is the most important activity that we could do in LinkedIn for sales? And I think it's commenting. It's commenting on other people's posts. Now, the first pushback people say is, oh, my prospects don't publish enough for me to comment. No problem. Who are the people who influence your buyers? The authors, the speakers, the consultants, the business owners. Those people post regularly, right? Bren, you post all the time. If I wanted to go talk to CEOs of companies, I know you got your focus in the banking industry as well. If I wanted to go meet those folks, why wouldn't I just go comment on Bren's post a couple times a week? Mm-hmm. What'll happen is your audience will start seeing me associated with you, and I can start sending connection requests and leverage my relationship with you in order to meet more people. So I think the question is, what do I think is the most strategic activity we can do? And I think it's commenting, because we then know, if I can look and see who's all engaging with Bren's content and I go comment on her post on a regular basis, I start to become involved in that ecosystem as well.
Yeah, so we call that prospect by influencer. So I love that. And we have campaigns. That's like my thing, right? Or the campaign. So prospect by interview is one, prospect by podcast is one. So we are so aligned with so much of that. Well, I am so grateful for your insights, and I'm sure the audience was quickly taking notes. So if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn, Brandon Lee, and then the company is Fist Bump. It's getfistbumps.com, but LinkedIn is my go-to. And here's a challenge I always tell everybody on that. Brent, I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but in my about section, I'm a CEO of a company. I get a lot of cold outreach, as I'm sure you do and most owners. In my about section, at the very bottom of it, I wrote a message very strategically, because I get BDRs and salespeople always send me stuff. And at the very bottom, I said, if you mention these things, I promise I will respond and give you an opportunity to share with me what you do. And in 2.5 years of doing that, I've only had 2 people ever mention it, which means most people are sending me messages without ever reading my about section, which is what I wrote about me into the business world. Don't you think you should read that before you reach out to somebody and get an understanding of what they say about themselves if you want to talk about them?
So I'm curious because I have a pre-call planning prompt that I'm going to throw your profile into after this and see if it comes up.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. I so appreciate you and grateful to have you as part of my inner network in the social selling world. So
I appreciate it. I've learned so much from you from a distance for so long. And then as we've gotten to know each other, I'm really grateful for your leadership.
Well, thank you, and back at you. So the feeling is mutual. So I love that. And so our listeners, don't forget when you're out and about to make your sales social. Have a good one.
Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.